There we go.
Hello.
Hello. So my name is Lisa Nilsson. I'm a senior advisor at Nordic Energy Research. This is the second of 4 webinars to prepare for the Nordic Grand Solutions call. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Kevin Johnson, working as a senior advisor at Nordic Energy Research as well, and assisting Lisa on this call for proposals.
So I have a PowerPoint that I will go through with you. I will go a little bit back because some of you were not available for the first webinar, but mostly this webinar will be about how to create a project and build a consortium that will answer the call text. Please raise your hands or jump in if you have need something to be explained in more detail. So please somebody say something if you can see a PowerPoint front page.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Very good. So this is the first 3 slides are repeating what the call is for. It's this is available also, of course, online and in the call text material. But the overall aim is to provide solutions how the Nordics will get into carbon neutrality and make the link to the green transition fast as possible in a just way where everybody, all energy consumers, all citizens of the Nordics will be part of this transition. There are different topics that all these topics have to fit together. They are different, complementary. The energy trilemma is how do you weigh the cost, the availability, the green, CO2 neutrality, and the rollout of this transition of the whole energy system. What are the solutions for tomorrow? What are all solutions and what are actually real new possible solutions? We also need to weigh against the use of the nature around us. We shouldn't disrupt or disturb the nature, the biosphere. That would be an even worse solution when we're trying to do something good for our habitat as humans. And it should also be sustainable for remote energy systems. Probably one project cannot solve all. That's why we have a call, and we expect to have a mix of projects that offer a good match of different types of solutions. There are 5 angles, and when you prepare your proposal, you should think that it's unlikely that your project can cover all 5 angles, but you should tell us in text, what are your main angles? Why is your project aimed at these angles? And maybe if you feel the need, tell us why it doesn't fit some other angle if there is a good reason for that. But you describe, present your project so that we understand it. That's the main point. So first of all, how do we identify a good project? That's your job. Well, does your research team have a clean energy technology? Is it under development? Does it have a vision for the green transition that you think this will actually really do something good beyond the interest of the technology itself, which engineers are happy to stay with? Does it interest everybody else too? Do you know who your stakeholders are? Do you want to have a dialogue with them to create a better path forward for your technology? And because obviously that will accelerate the uptake of the technology into society, which is what we want. Is your team part of a Nordic partnership, or are you trying to build a Nordic partnership? All of these things means if you fulfill these, you might have a good project. How then to build a consortium? When we say consortium, we mean the partnership as a whole, the people who and the organizations who will be engaged in the time of the project life. So It might be the three first ones, the standard partnership: technology owners, technology developers, researchers. And a good idea. The technicians to do the project. Maybe somebody to describe a levelized cost of energy or measure something. And the project leader must be a research performing organization as part of the standard eligibility rules for this call. But a consortium is much more than the standard technology project. What you have here is the first three, more or less. It's research, businesses, universities, government, meaning there are some rules and regulations. It's a triple helix approach. We have a university with some hardcore research skills, and we have a business who wants to develop a product that they can sell. We need more. The next picture here is called a pentahelix. It includes also the community as a whole, or stakeholders beyond the first three. It also includes media, meaning the general public, or how is this new technology presented? What is it good for? How does it match with it? We wouldn't want somebody to be called out for greenwashing. That would not be the right type of solution. Maybe it's not greenwashing, but somebody forgot to tell the story the right way, or figure out what kind of parameters should this project also measure while they're busy doing the core technology development. There are more to the technology. It could be that you need a demonstration site and availability of balance of systems. So you might need a partner who has the rights to let you in on this demonstration site. Then they should be partners in the project. It could be that obviously you need an infrastructure that doesn't exist right now. That is very common for the hydrogen projects. They have to imagine, what kind of infrastructure do I need? Who would be in charge of that? Some of these should probably be engaged in the project somehow, maybe not directly in the project, who knows, maybe in an advisory group position or as an observer for the project. Independent system operators, transmission system operators, distribution system operators. Whenever you are touching the grid of some energy system, somebody has a rule or a job to distribute, and they need they would be a primary stakeholder, probably. You need them to accept or to be in a dialogue if you need to change how you move or interact with the system. Maybe you imagine a new rule or a new regulation or a different tariff or cost price or something, access, like direct lines instead of the grid for power production. Regulations beyond the energy system itself, market regulations, safety regulations, things that may and may not be developed already. You need to foresee what might need to be developed. Maybe not inside your project, but just beyond project life. We need to know that you have in your application that you have an idea of what awaits to make this happen. What is the pathway immediately following your project timeline? Somebody took over control. I have it back, I think. So maybe you need investors. In any case, you need to know what investors want to hear from you. So you need to show that you have an idea how to get your project to the next level, or what type, what scale of investment you need to make it come to life. Where would these investors be found? How would you pitch to them in your project? How will you engage them? Most certainly neighbors would be interesting. There are types of technologies that people don't want to be neighbors for. Not in my backyard is a NIMBY, is a well-known topic. Neighbors could also be future employees if your technology is geographically placed at a site. Then you probably should think, what would neighbors think? And maybe even include them in a project in some capacity, like ask them, tell them what you're planning, hear their feedback. That might be, for some technologies, a really good idea, because they might also point out something that your project needs to address to answer worries and questions. Otherwise, you might be in the banana instead of the NIMBY. Banana means build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody. And that would be a showstopper for any technology. Media, the fifth in the pentahelix, the general public, they need transparency. If they're going to trust your technology, pay whatever the costs are, accept it, you need to prepare how to explain your project. Those are possible consortium partners. You don't necessarily have all of them in your project, but you need to find out if they are partners, if they are observers, if they are somehow. If this was a sport and not a project, you would have the team members with the different roles. You have the goalkeeper, you have the center forward, you have the backstoppers and the runners. Here you also have a coach over here on the left side of the top picture. He's probably the project leader. You have some trainers in the back, people who support your organization. You have the opposing team. They might be really good for your project to actually talk to. Well, are we actually opposing teams? So we both need each other to play. We also have to agree on the playing field, what it looks like. Those are defined by infrastructure and rules. Somebody else made those rules. You have to apply, follow the rules, but maybe sometimes you move the rules, or there are no rules for your technology yet. What should it look like? Who should decide that? Investors, oh yeah, definitely important here. And then the support functions, the early movers, the people who buy the merchandise, the media, the audience, the spectators. How would they fit into your project? The weather, since this is renewable energy technology, probably the weather is pretty important and might decide your geography, where you should be at. And of course, the core technology would be the ball. It's still in the focus. The ball is sort of, you can't get around it, but you need the rest to make the ball play. Then you build a winning consortium by thinking Olympics, maybe, because there is not just football. It could be any kind of sport. So it could be any kind of technology that offers the same green transition potential, to solve the energy trilemma potential, to do no harm to the environment potential, to be just and fair, to offer security of supply, maybe even do that in remote energy systems. They are all there to play in the Olympics. So you place your core technology in its intended environment. You draw up the value chain, meaning you probably shouldn't exhaust every single possible partner of the value chain, but you have to identify the core members that create your value chain, your providers, your research team, your direct customers, the end users maybe, and find out which ones have direct influence on the step that you are at. They should be in the project. And if somebody isn't in the project, you maybe should explain, well, they are still stakeholders. They're important for our value chain, but we are not engaging them right now because something. This is readily available materials. We don't need to find that provider, or we have an activity or an outreach dissemination plan that will engage that type of stakeholder. So they don't need to be in the project. They will be engaged through project activities. Some could be partners. Partners have, by the definition, partners have deciding influence on the outcome of when you are at a crossroads in your project. Is this how we move forward in our project? Do we agree that this is the best selection of the options we have? If you are in a position to make decisions, then you are a partner. If you are coming with valuable guidance and input, maybe advice, offering interest, then you might be an observer. But you're not deciding anything, and you're not helping people to move the project directly forward. You're just assisting the project. You could be an observer. You could be a future investor as an observer. Some are end users, and they, in some projects, they will make a lot of sense to be already engaged, like a consumer organization or a cluster of excellence within your field, or a municipality that might have a field for this technology to be built. Different types of end users. They are also observers, but they have a different interest. It's hard for some projects to be connected to decision makers, but if you're going to have input on new rules, new tariffs, new regulations, you need to make somebody hear your results. This is what the whole program is for. We will have the annual workshops, and we, as Nordic Energy Research for the program Nordic Grand Solutions, will do our best to draw in that type of audience for these annual workshops, and for the when the projects come out with conclusions, we will see if that could be summarized in a policy brief, for instance, with the project's assistance, and try to engage decision makers or governmental agencies in learning these results as they develop. So you should also really already from the beginning have an idea of your dissemination and communication plans. For this project, for this call, it's not enough to say we will develop a dissemination plan in the first 3 months of the project lifetime. That's too weak. You should have a more clear idea of who you should try to communicate with and how you might do that. And the web page and the LinkedIn's page or YouTube channel is probably a little too weak of an answer. It should be more suited and tailored to your project. Obviously, you will still have a web page probably, but that's not enough of an answer at this stage. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, last webinar, a lot of people asked about how do we find partners to discuss a potential proposal with? How do we do matchmaking? So Kevin created a matchmaking form. You will have to answer these simple questions: your name, your organization, your email, contact information, what of the nationality, because the rule of 3 different countries, so nationality is important for the organization. Short description, that is really very short. What type of organization are you? Very short description of what are you looking for? What is it, biomass? Is it wind power? Where are you? Whatever you think is enough to attract somebody to maybe contact you. You don't have to tell your whole idea. That would probably also be not great. And then you have a very short description on what are you looking for? Are you looking for a partner with a type of research facility? Are you looking for a components producer? What is it? So let's see if we can show what that looks like. I wonder if you can see it. Probably not, because I would have to say share the window. So here you have the link goes to this page, Nordic Grand Solutions matchmaking form, and you simply start answering by clicking here. Then you answer the questions and it uploads. And you will, of course, be able to access the spreadsheet once it's generating. It will be updated when people input answers. This is the test input. This is what it will look like when you look into it and to see if there's something, hey, we need to contact that company that could be good for us. So I will stop sharing for a second. Any questions so far? Because then I will just go ahead and share again. Yes, Karim or Farid, sorry, Farid.
Yes. Hello. Thanks. I have one question about the actually objective of the calls. When I read it and when I was listening to you, I have the impression that the proposal should be focused on technology developments or site development, you name it. Whereas I wonder if there is any chance that the application would focus only on, let's say, non-technical aspects of green transitions, mostly on policy development, political issues, you name it, you know?
Yes, that's a good question. It's possible that some mature technologies can be applied in a new way. That would be an innovation, maybe. Maybe you have a concept where quite developed technologies are applied differently. That would be possible. You have to explain. It's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be some sort of change to the technology, at least the development of a service to do what your idea would be. A service development would count if it's something that adds a layer of innovation. You don't have to, absolutely do developmental research on a technology which we haven't seen before to apply, but then you have to explain that where you start at and why that doesn't need a technical development. But that's possible. We're not going to be very happy with applications that are pure desktop studies. But it could be that a set of known technologies can be applied in an innovative way. A new market idea maybe, or a new aggregator idea, who knows? That would be, you can explain that within this project type. Are there more questions? There's a chat. Yeah, somebody asked about the TRL levels, which we will answer presently. Nordic added value last webinar, I just showed the picture and explained what it meant. So this time I added a little more. Imagine you are in a household, in an apartment building. What is Nordic added value if you were living in a Nordic apartment building? The country is having different apartments. Well, you might think that everybody should be up and have breakfast at 8 in the morning and do things, and nobody should have anything but oatmeal. Well, that is your own decision, and it's not something that would be useful for the other apartment tenants to listen to. But you might agree that it's a good idea to agree when you want to have house rules for when you should not make noise. That could be a nice joint rule that would apply to everybody, and also not make so much sense if I made my own rule in my own house, but everybody else had a different rule. Passport union is a good example of the Nordic passport union. Scandinavian rules. You can't have a passport union unless the neighbors agree. The Nord Pool exchange, the energy market rules are also common market rules that mean that the energy system works across borders, which is something you could not do if you didn't do it together. That is Nordic added value. It's much better together. Some topics like labor market regulations or green transition policy and financing are actually individual per country, but they're much better together. If we have regulations that might be different, but they work the same way for labor, we can share labor across the borders. And we can figure it out. If we have maybe a different detailed green transition policy and the financing is different, but the target is the same, that's Nordic added value. We all lift in the same direction, and that makes even more sense because the energy resources are complementary. Some have hydropower, some have biomass power, some have wind power. There are different types of availability, and it makes a lot more sense to make the systems work together. So that's Nordic added value. And our sister organization Nordforsk just published a report about Nordic added value in a historic context. The link will be here in the PowerPoint afterwards, and in the webinar video you can see it too, where you can read more in detail what is meant by Nordic added value. I will get to the TRL level for the next slide, but I saw a question. The project time duration is for 3 years. No, you cannot. Well, a PhD would probably need a little more than 3 years, so that's not included for the timeline, and therefore also not included for the budget. So probably that would be not a PhD within the project. Thank you, Kevin, for putting it in the link in the chat. You would have to figure out another way to finalize or pay for the finalization of a PhD that might be based on such a project here. So you don't have to define a TRL, a technology readiness level, if that doesn't fit your proposal, if it doesn't make sense in your proposal. You should then argue why not, just so that it makes sense. If a TRL makes sense, please use a starting TRL and an ending TRL and argue why you are at a starting TRL level of 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, 6, and why you end at 4, 5, 6, 7 as an ending TRL. How are you going to do that? You have to argue that. We are looking for the most interesting, visionary, doable, well-argued proposals for the green transition. They will come at different cost scales. So some projects will need to apply for a 8 million Norwegian kroner proposal and have some own funding, self-financing. Others will have to apply for more money and might have only the necessary 10% own financing. This will be different from different projects, and the external experts who evaluate the proposals will judge if it makes sense, if the budgeting is well done. Does it include all necessary costs, which you include for you to complete the project? You argue it, and you say, why do we need this? Who will be paying what? And you just put it out as this is the way this project will work. So that could be. There have been some questions on email, and we put them in the questions and answers in the Q&A section of this website of the call. So you can go into more detail about what type is this included. Yes, if it's a cost that you think is necessary for your project, it's included. As long as it's within the regulations of what it can normally be funded. We're not allowed to fund that you buy a land, a site for an installation, or to build a building or buy a car. Those are not types of costs are not normally included in research projects, and they're not included here. The picture shows you my favorite road in Norway, which is when you go down from the Hardangervidda towards Eidfjord. This is the road you follow. That is the logical path to get down from the mountain. It looks kind of funny in its own way, and it definitely looks like a detour that shouldn't be necessary. But you have a 800-meter drop, and so you have to get around to go down in a safe way. And for many projects, some of the detours is the only way to get there, because look from above, it looks like a easy thing to follow the main path, but when you get into the details of the project itself, it turns out there are a few more things that have to be explored or followed to get to the result you want. And then finally, the program itself, as I said, this is the call, and there is a series of open workshops that will follow up after the funding has been granted for the projects. The idea is to make the projects work together and share early results or thoughts, because the projects will most likely be complementary and maybe also competing for who knows. Some project might be competing for the same resource or for the same type of investment or for the same input in the energy market. But in any case, we want to know that the projects are aware of each other as they progress, and that if somebody has a solution that changes the other project's thinking, that would be a good thing. We also want to use these workshops to build a strong interest for the Nordic stakeholders, governmental organizations, agencies, potential investors, the general public, to know what might be a working path, a path to walk along to get to the grid transition before 2030. And again, the eligibility criteria, we really mean it. If you don't, these are eligibility criteria. If a project doesn't follow these criteria, it cannot be funded. So here in this one, these three Nordic countries, meaning Finland, Sweden, Norway, Faroe Islands, Iceland, Denmark. 3 of these is a minimum. A minimum of 10% in-kind contribution of total budget, meaning self-financed or financed from somebody else, but not an already existing project cannot be part of the budget, for instance. Can't have double budgeting. You have to meet state aid restrictions, meaning that the research organizations within the broad definition of research organizations that you can find on the links can be fully funded, but private organizations, businesses will have a de minimis funding opportunity of 200,000 euros. And state aid restrictions also means, as I said, you can't buy land, you can't build a building for these types of funding. You can support bringing about information and data for a patent application, for instance, and to work towards that. That's within state aid restrictions. If you have a TRL, you should state the starting and final TRL, and it should be within the range of 2 to 8. It's not probable that a project will jump from 2 to 8 in one project in 3 years. That is unlikely. But you have to argue your starting and your ending TRL if you use the TRL term. If you don't use it, just maybe it would be a good idea to say why it doesn't make sense for you in your project. Maximum duration of 3 years. The projects have to be started no later than May 1st of 2024 and have a maximum duration of 3 years. They don't have to be 3 years. Funded budget cannot be less than 8 million Norwegian kroner, and of course those have to be well-argued money. And the maximum funded budget will be 25 million Norwegian kroner, plus of course the 10% minimum in-kind contribution. If you have observers who are obviously not partners, but you put them in the list in your application, say these are observers, they might have a supporting role. They might say, yes, you can use our site, but we will not be part of the project as such. We're just interested in seeing how you do it. That would be an observer that you need to prove that is in the project because you need the site. It could also be that they say, we are going to lend you some laboratory facilities to the value of 200,000 kroner. Then they put that in a letter of intent that they are supporting the project with this, and that will count. Observers' in-kind contributions will count towards the 10%, which is useful. If they say, we will provide this service or this access or this advisory role of the project, but we don't want to disclose the cost, the value of that. Some business would prefer to keep that a commercial secret. Then it doesn't count towards the 10% in-kind, but they should put it in writing anyway, that we choose to do this. So we don't have to wonder what happened with that partner. Thank you. Is there contact information? Any more questions? Farid again, yes?
Sorry, one clarification question about this 10% in kind. Does that mean that each partner has to have this 10%, or as a consortium as a whole should have 10% overall budget? Can you please also elaborate on that?
Consortium as a whole should have a 10% in kind. Different partners can do different things. Yes.
Okay, so it means that it is possible if one partners claim 100%, but for instance, the other partners kind of contribute in that sense or compensate in that sense for the overall budget, because some of the parties are not able to contribute. Thank you.
No, that's absolutely right. Rohit Kothari?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I have a question related to overhead. It is written that there is no limit to overhead, but like for example, in Denmark, public universities takes 44% as overhead. So that rule will be followed here?
Yes,
or
you can absolutely state that overhead. We should probably write this is standard in Denmark, so that the experts know. And if the standard is different in another country, the way overhead is covered, you state that. The experts will give an assessment of the necessity of the budget and the budget parts and the overall budget. But you have to put in the budget what is necessary to actually complete the project. So yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. And there is one more question. Can you little bit elaborate what is this de minimis rule for the companies and non-research partners?
A de minimis rule means that a state is always allowed to give aid to a business or an organization, even if it might be state aid, which is because the de minimis says this is the limit where you can always offer that support for that business, because they will get a financial benefit. They will get a competitive edge from having the grant and being a part of the project, but it's legal because it's with the cap of 200,000 euros. Let's say a business already has used the de minimis is counted for 3 rolling years looking backwards, and maybe one partner you really want to have in your project already used that de minimis last year, or so it still counts. They can't have any more de minimis for the next 2 years. For this case, there is the unusual case that let's say the company is based in Sweden and they have a Swedish de minimis covered already from the Swedish state funding. Well, in this case, they might count for themselves that they can have the 200,000 euros de minimis from the Finnish state or from the Norwegian state, because there are 5 states that are funding this project. You're allowed to have the 200,000 euro de minimis per recipient per state that you are given the grant from. So it doesn't stop a partner to join the project if it already has a de minimis limit in place, because probably they don't have 5 de minimis limits in place. Of course, they are responsible for telling you and telling us if that should be the case. You are responsible to declare this.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So, and then Kishore?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have a query. It's about, you have mentioned in your presentation that the project leader has to be RPO, Research Performance Organization. And then again, you refer that the budget will not cover for PhD students because it is the project is duration is limited to 3 years only. So, but what about the postdoctoral? Because mainly for postdoctoral, they are recruited for 2 years. So can the postdoctoral budget will be as a part of the in the proposal?
Yes.
Hello?
Did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Because Kevin probably can answer that question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, so postdocs can be, so salary for postdocs can be part of the project. And And also just clarifying the PhD students. So there's a possibility to include work from PhD students as well, but it needs to be you either need to describe in the project text how you're going to go forward to get the PhD students at your organization if you don't have any and intend to use this funding for it, or you need to argue how existing PhD students can contribute to this project as well. So it's not the aim of this type of call is not to fund PhD students directly. So it needs to be so it's the project that we fund, and then you need to describe what role a potential PhD or an existing PhD student would have in the project. And the same goes for postdocs, other types of researchers, project partners, etc.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So there is a good question in the chat from Paul Anderson. Does in-kind contribution from a non-Nordic partner or observer count towards the 10%? Yes, it does. It has to be reasonably explained what kind of in-kind contribution that is, how it is paid forward, how it's calculated, but yes, it will count. Rohit Kothari again. Or maybe that's a so-called old hand.
No, I already asked question, sorry.
Okay, great. The design of this call is it's very open. That's probably also going to be a little bit confusing when you read it, because you have a lot of questions. Is that really what is meant, or did we just forget to write the limitation in the call text? You should check out the questions and answers, or write directly to me or to Kevin or both of us and ask if you're not sure. But really, this call is designed to allow you to make the best project for your idea. And you didn't then have to convince the experts that this is actually a really good idea, the way to do it. We will have another webinar on the 15th of June. And again in the 5th of September, just before the call deadline. And those webinars will go into more detail of the application portal, what is meant by this question. Most of the questions have a text that assists you in, oh yeah, I have to answer these things in my proposal. So we will go through that for the next webinar, and any questions that come up, we will probably introduce in the webinar and answer them. If there is a really good Q&A going on, we will bring it to the next webinar too. I hope you will enjoy the matchmaking possibility, because Nordic added value is definitely also to build your network with other Nordic partners that are part of your value chain. That might be a good business partner when your project goes forward, who knows, or a good research partner. There was a study once that said that even if you're not granted a proposal, not granted the project for your proposal, to have done the work gives you an instant 1% higher output on your company bottom line the first year, just from having a good look at your technology, having a good look at your value chain, your partners. So for a business and organization perspective, it's valuable to be part of a proposal. From a research perspective, and a university perspective, or a technological institute perspective, obviously you get a better network and you get a better outreach, and you might have new customers, even if you're not granted the budget, the proposal. Just to pitch it to you that it's worth it, even though we think, because the call is so open, we think there will be quite a lot of proposals, or at least we can see that there are now 39 people, 40 people online. And so I think you're also from many different organizations, so I hope you have a lot of fun finding your consortium. We will definitely look forward to reading your proposals. Any more questions?
participant arriving right now. And some final words from me as well. I would just like to highlight the name of the call, Nordic Grand Solutions. And it's and by that I think it's important to have in mind that we are looking for, you need to describe the solutions you're trying to give in this call. And it's not called Nordic Grand Technologies. So even though it's easy to think about technologies when you look into this, it's also open for other types of solutions as well. But as Lisa mentioned, it's by highlighting the solution parts, it's not supposed to be a clean desktop study. You also need to have some other partners and some other stakeholders involved as well. I think that might be the key message from my side today.
A good question from one of the first questions. Kevin, yeah?
No.
Oh, that was just a hand. Okay. So if there are no more questions, I will just be hanging out in the screen for a few minutes. I will stop the video. Oh, let's see, chat. Presentation on web page. Yes, we will put a PowerPoint PDF version of the PowerPoint available on the web page, so you can find it afterwards. Yes. Figure out how to stop sharing. There. Then I will figure out how to stop the video.